So hello all, a very good afternoon. And to myself, Ekta Dubey, and on behalf of the Brinalytics team and our partner AMU, we welcome you all and thank you so much for being part of our roundtable on digital transformation, driving customer experience for BFSI sector. So just a little guideline, we're requesting everybody to be on mute so that when somebody is speaking, it would be really nice. We will have no disturbance. So that's the only request with everyone. So before we move on to the roundtable, which is moderated by Sachin, I would just like to give you a little highlight about our partner and why we are all here today. So to start with, I would first like to introduce our partner AMU. It's an omni-channel customer engagement platform that empowers customer experience teams to deliver exceptional customer service. With AMU, it's easy to deliver end-to-end automation for the most demanding customer engagement process. Conversations across marketing, sales, and service on an engagement channel can be served from a single platform. And their solution also includes case management, outbound dialer, and customer service CRM, combined with powerful reporting and dashboards that surface actionable insights. Today, as we all know, the roundtable will be focusing on the lessons learned and the changes that had brought in CX because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the importance of customer centricity and customer experience enhancement. What are the key strategies to deliver a seamless customer experience and how digital transformation is redefining the business, the BFSI sector? So I would like to first introduce all the speakers so that everybody is aware who all, of course, you have seen, we have displayed the speaker's name also, but let me take this pleasure to introduce you all. We have Mr. Pankaj Gupta joining us in some time, Chief Technology Officer with Bharti AXA Life Insurance. We will also have Mr. Vivek Chakardi, Vice President Analytics with IIFL. We have Mr. Prithiman Sarkar, Senior Vice President SBI Cards and Payment Services Limited. Mr. Ashish Nigam, CIO and CTO with PTC India Financial Services. Mr. Raj Pardugal, Deputy Managing Director and Group CFO with Oxygen Services India Private Limited. Mr. Anurag Srivastav, Senior Vice President, Awas Financials, Ms. Rajni Sharaf, CFO and President with J&K Bank, Himanshu Gupta, Director, SMC Global Securities Limited, CEO and Director with SMC Finance, Moneywise Financial Services Private Limited, Mr. Vishal Bhatia, CFO with Balance Zero India Private Limited and a board member of Two Credits, NBFC. And to moderate, of course, we have Mr. Sachin Bhatia, a CEO with AMU, to take it forward. So yes, Mr. Sachin, over to you. We have Mr. Ashish and Pankaj, both have joined us. So quickly, you can start and we can have.
Thanks, Ekta, and thank you everyone for joining in this afternoon. AMU does these events, and I've been a sales and marketing guy, not to talk about us, but to share learnings of what we have learned and also learn from folks on the panel on what's top of their mind on some of the topics that we are seeing in the market as we do conversations with more and more CX specialists. I have listed 5 to 6 topics, so we'll have about 15-20 minutes to discuss on each topic. It's going to be a free-flowing discussion when none of us are required to use any slides. Think of 10-15 friends sitting on a coffee table or over a glass of beer and having a chat, because that gets the best out of us in terms of what are the real issues. We don't have audience, so there's no jargon required. Essentially, we want to make sure that there are real problems that are discussed, and my job is to sort of give direction and maybe share some of the experiences that I have had. The first topic, all of us were taken by shock last year, and we had to move a lot of processes remote, do a lot of stuff, and I think that was knee-jerk, and we all basically did a pretty good job of handling business as usual, getting back to business as usual from the remote processes. But then something very interesting happened. Some of the processes that were traditionally feet on street, they were now orchestrated to go remote. And the question on the floor is that, what processes do you think, whether it's pandemic or no pandemic, they were feet on street processes in the CX segment, whether it's onboarding, sales, or service or collections, in whatever segment. We today have specialists on the panel from insurance, from cards, from banking, from lending. which processes do you think will stay remote and why, right? So I have a few names, people who have shown interest in this topic. So let me invite them on this. Why don't we start with Anurag? Anurag, what has moved remote and would it stay remote? Anurag from Avas.
Sure, sure. Thanks, Sachin, for this opportunity. And I think a lot of origination and assessment, risk assessment processes, similarly on the collections and recovery side. So what has happened that a lot of things that were done primarily by feet on the street, the transition has happened. It has rather been accelerated because of this pandemic. It's not that, I think there have been discussions of doing things remotely for a long time. So that kind of transition, this pandemic helped in accelerating. But still, can we say that there is a particular process which has 100% become remote and there is no like a physical element out there? So I think no, that's not the case today. The reality in which we are operating is kind of a hybrid reality. So idealism is good for discussion. We would like to have most of the things completely machine driven and as remote as possible. But in reality, the success is like kind of driven by a good mix of remote as well as on-site present. And this is primarily defined on the basis of what kind of product we are catering to, what kind of profile we are catering to, in which geography we are operating. Because in a sense, see, when we talk about these remote processes, we bring technology and AI into picture. Everything is driven on the back of a very robust data availability. The moment we start moving into remote geographies, underserved and unserved segments, tier 3 and below, the access to data, availability of data, starts becoming not so rich. And that's how your solutions will always be a bit, not as far as you will be able to do in elite segments in tier 1 cities where people have good digital footprint. So there are challenges because of which a hybrid is the success mantra as of now.
Got it, Anurag. So what I hear is that tier 2, tier 3, and even tier 4, there is physical presence. But let me call in Ashish, Mr. Ashish Nigam, if he's around. Ashish, your thoughts on this? We were not able to talk to you yesterday, but you had expressed interest on this topic. So, are there any core processes? What is your observation, Ashish?
See, we primarily deal in the lending for very large ticket size, maybe 50 to 100 CR as a minimum base. So for us, the customers are really the corporate and the big corporates who invest in some kind of projects, or we do project financing. So as for any other entity, the customers are dear to us, and the customer support is also very important. But we must understand, for such kind of customers, bots or telephones or a kind of mail kind of services is not just enough. These are very, very fancy, because the kind of customers for ticket size of 100 CR or maybe 200 CR, they would want us to have in-person meeting, or they would really want to have their issues sorted out, whatever the issues could be. So the technology over here plays a very important role in actually giving the complete data of the customers, or the profile of the customers, or the loan of the customers, how the loan has been performed, to the management when they are coming for the meeting, because they may have some certain issues with respect to whatever it could be. So on the fly, those details are required. Sometimes the technology doesn't that kind of solution doesn't provide what they are looking at, the senior management is looking at. So it's a kind of combination of the uh, the uh, the portal that we have for the lending, for the customers, and what they want. Now, sometimes what happens is that the customers are interested in making some kind of early payments or something like that. So then again, it becomes a simulation exercise on the fly, that if we do it, so what is the uh, what is the output that the customer is going to get. is looking at, or what kind of benefits he's looking at, what is the benefit that that the company is going to gain out of it, and all those things. So for us, the technology plays very limited role. It is more of the relationship. It is more of the customer experience that we bring in at that level, at that stage. So yes, we are actually now planning for some kind of artificial intelligence over here. This is for to be customers, not the customers per se. These are for
Got
the prospects.
got it.
So,
Ashish,
so
you
I would actually pause over
yeah.
here. Maybe. Yeah.
No. Just one point on this, because in our previous meeting we kept discussing tier 2, tier 3, but here's a very interesting use case. High net worth individuals, they require attention, and Ashish says that there has to be physical presence there. But we have also seen at the same time banks like HDFC, ICICI moving their high net worth relationship management completely remote. Uh, it doesn't mean that they can't do physical, but they're feeling more in control because all the conversations, what is happening in those conversations, what is then leading to customer churning, not churning, what led to customer being unhappy, can actually be diagnosed, which is otherwise extremely difficult. But we didn't discuss this point yesterday, a very interesting point. We always thought that tier 4 or tier 3 is going to be difficult. Here is a perspective that, even the top tier HNI customer, where it's probably a high touch engagement, is also going to be
Yeah,
difficult.
this is
Yeah.
we are talking about 100 CR plus.
And this is primarily businesses.
That's right. These are primarily very those who would invest in some innovative technologies. Let's say maybe e-vehicles, right? So they may be interested in putting in their project over there or something like that. Maybe it's a biogas kind of project, which is
I'm inclined to quote something. We just raised our $35 million without actually meeting any of the VCs face to face, right? So I think there's a change that is happening, Ashish. If we try and do it, you could record those calls. In fact, whatever I have said on those calls is now recorded, so they could say you said this and this is wrong. But that's an entrepreneur talking. But I think the mindset of the customer has to change. In this case, the customer was, I'm applying for that fund, right? So I'm okay doing it remote, but maybe a traditional business is not.
well, I would not disagree over here, but then we have a very diverse use cases. We can discuss that later. Yeah, thank you. But anyway, thanks.
Thanks, Ashish. Thanks for coming in. Let me bring in Himanshu. Himanshu from SMC. I think he mentioned a few processes that have gone completely remote. Yes, Himanshu.
Yeah. So thanks for inviting me. So Sachin, I agree with what earlier Anurag said, that it is going to be a hybrid model which will work, and it will depend on the customer or the product segment that we are into. For example, I'll give you the use case which we have. We are dealing in business loans, which we are providing to the SME customers. So this pandemic has been really a pit stop for us and made us rethink or redesign our existing processes. So typically at the time of onboarding, there are about 4 to 5 times minimum number of physical touch points with the customer. One, like for example, the salesperson is going to meet the customer and collect the documents, and then the credit person is again meeting the customer. Then there are third-party agencies, FI valuations that are going on simultaneously, and then the signing of the document. So what we have been able to do or achieve is reduce the number of touch points which we have during the onboarding journey. For example, the salesperson now is doing a video PD with the customer. So the templates are designed and everything is captured with the geolocation and all. Even for some of the cases where we have higher level of comfort, the credit person is also doing video PD in some of the cases. And after the loan is sanctioned, then again the document signing or KYC completion is again fulfilled through digital modes in some of the cases. So what I mean to say, the hybrid model is going to work, but the number of physical touch points are really going down. and that is really increasing the turnaround times, the traveling cost and traveling time is like gone down, and the customer is feeling more comfortable. Like earlier, he used to meet some or the other guy 5-6 times at least if the case is sanctioned in a single instance. So that has really helped. So that was something I thought we saw in our use case over the year.
Pankaj, we didn't hear from you yesterday,
Yeah.
but I felt to bring you in, and you also unmuted, so I think we are thinking alike. Uh, can you share your thoughts at EXA? Are there some of the core CX processes that are moving remote?
So, life insurance is a business of trust, and it has largely been an intermediary business, and this Sharma ji, who is an intermediary, was no less than a walking CRM for the customer, because he knows the family, he knows who is born, who is getting married, and who is going for education, higher education, and so on and so forth. And this connect was so important for the customer, and this relationship used to get managed before pandemic far more, despite the fact that you had all the digital tools. This conversation was very, very human oriented, given the life insurance is not a simple product, or at least not as simple as say mutual fund or something. Of course, with pandemic coming in and disturbing this whole rhythm, the organizations, including Bharti AXA Life, started moving to digital platforms where we can remotely engage through videos, sharing content remotely through WhatsApp, and also, given in insurance, underwriting is of course one of the key processes. Instead of getting people to do physical medicals, getting them to do a video, for example, video medical or a telemedical, all of these tools, of course, got into play, which were never, of course, being looked at from that perspective earlier. And it helped us to do a lot of these processes remotely rather than getting customer to be physically present. And hence, right from sales to service, to onboarding to service, everything practically digitized under one umbrella of digital transformation for us. As I said, right from remote sales to all eKYC and all digital onboarding using various data sources like KYC, Sybil, and so and so. So I mean, so much of data is available in the ecosystem today. And then, of course, followed by video medicals and telemedicals to a welcome call. All of this done remotely, and then servicing, of course, enabling through self-service options, through chatbots and of course through self-service on the website. All of this helped us to actually even see volume going down in our branches and even in the call center. And hence, this whole digital agenda not only helped us to solve the customer's problem in the pandemic, but actually also helped us to start solving for our operational cost.
Yeah.
And so it has been quite an exciting journey that way for us in these last 12 to 18 months specifically. And so while there is still a segment of customers, who would still need a far more personal connect with the organization, I think physical touch. But I think more and more now customers are prefer channel of their choice, which is through more through digital mediums.
So is it safe to assume, Pankaj, that I mean, yes, it got accelerated due to the pandemic, but we're not going to go back on those processes given the operational advantages and even the control that you get, because you can basically measure almost everything, and what you can measure, you can improve. Your thoughts?
I don't think it's a two-way road. It's a one-way road, and it has to only go up. So in my view, this will only further accelerate through more intelligence and even simplification, I think, which is important as a process or as a customer journey, so as to reduce the friction for the customer. That is what customer wants today, nothing else. I mean, yeah.
Okay, interesting. So we see a couple of trends. We first saw that there is a hybrid thing required, but then we also see a little bit more conviction. We also heard from somebody saying that HNIs are still going to be served physical, and I actually strongly disagree. I think it's a transition and one has to take that step for the simple fact that what is measurable can be improved. And we were relying on superheroes, sales folks who were out there in the market doing whatever magic they were, and we don't know. And today we can actually measure everything and then say what is working, what is not working. And that incremental improvement is what one can do by bringing it under the measurable umbrella. My second topic for the forum is last 5 years, I think this whole FOMO around AI, ML as a technology. And, I did a session in Mumbai, I remember, and I said, I have a 5-year-old kid and he plays with a fidget spinner and he doesn't know why. And that's what's happening with AI, that everybody wants to do something in AI, but that was then. I think a lot has changed in the last 3, 4, 5 years. And we wanted to discuss real use cases where you have seen it functioning, right? Whether at the back end and more importantly at the front end, with the customer actually interacting with the AI, portions of use cases or agent getting assisted with the AI or AI helping in quality monitoring. Have you seen some of those cases, happening around you from your friends, from the businesses that you have seen, and not just theory, right? Something that you've actually seen working. And let me bring in Prithman first. He has had some experience on this. So, Prithman, go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity, Sachin. So fundamentally, what's the shift which has happened? And I think a lot of organizations were somehow or the other very well prepared to be in this space before the COVID came in. I'll just give you a very small example of what we have been able to do. A lot of and yesterday when we were talking, Mr. Duggal was stating about the last mile and the efficiency and the ability of the agent to service appropriately at a tier 2, tier 3. I'll bring in 2-3 elements which is going to be critical from our conversation standpoint. One is we were able to build a knowledge bot. The knowledge bot is AI based. What exactly it does is you can go to Google. If you have to go from a place A to place B, you just type in the destination from where you want to start and where you want to end, and then the voice takes over. The lady speaks, you take a left, right, and you reach the place. Now, the knowledge bot of ours works with that efficacy, which means that if you've got an issue and the agent is on the call and is able to get trained basically on the empathy part of it, some bit of a knowledge, some bit of an understanding of the processes, and building those 9 yards in terms of being able to have a reasonable conversation with the customer. If the agent is able to type in what the query of the customer is, there is a proof of concept or a structured conversation which pops up, which helps the agent to respond. That's 1. 2, rebut wherever required. 3, do upsell, cross-sell. 4, retain a customer, right? And there are tools, empowerment, which is already available in the CRM, which helps you to do that. That's one part of the knowledge bot, and the bot itself is developed. It is working at an efficiency, and obviously it will move further. That's one part of an artificial intelligence implemented, and we can see the benefits of that. The second bit of it is the most important thing, and you being from that space, how has the CRMs of each of the organizations behaved? When I use the word CRM, CRM is hosting data, it is managing data, it is interfacing with multiple channels and ABC, whatever is happening. So on the email space, we have been able to see a substantial amount of accuracy, a substantial amount of volume-driven business getting addressed there, which helps us to make sure that the repeatability of the customer and the accuracy of the responses has worked well. Chatbot has worked fundamentally brilliantly prior to COVID, during COVID. The demand shift, what we have seen during COVID, has been transformational. So we have seen that customers have literally moved up the curve of demand. Service through self-service has been upwards of 90%. Now COVID coming back to normalcy, people have started calling up. The demands have reduced in the digital space, which means that servicing is not 90% plus, but it has come down to late 80s, but it hasn't really gone back to the old numbers, which we have seen. From a conversation perspective, I will bring in the element of the IVR. In the CRM, you have an IVR, and the customer comes in, they press 1, 2, 3, and when you do 1, 2, 3, you go in and you get a response to whatever menu card, or else you go and talk to the agent. We built a contextual IVR. So if Anurag calls in and Anurag needs to know his statement, duplicate statement, or Anurag needs to know his payment date, or Anurag forgets, and every 2-3 months, I'm sorry, I'm picking you up, he forgets to do that. What we do is we know that the customer would have this intent. So with so much of data lying with us, we read the intent and we pop up a question to Anurag saying, Mr. Srivastav, are you looking for a duplicate statement, without he hitting the IVR? Mr. Srivastav, if you are okay with this, please press 1. He presses 1 and he doesn't hit my IVR. He walks away and the duplicate statement gets delivered on its phone or on his email, and we are sorted. That is from a contextual IVR perspective. So the enablement from a knowledge bot helps you to give you the first time right kind of a construct. The chat bot gives you a flexibility to respond to the customer, or else he will pop in and write in the web form. Contextual IVR helps to reduce the time of the customer to come in and listen and then walk away with the responses. And most important is, all of this has to be integrated appropriately on the CRM. The CRM has to be very powerful. What we see is the CRM progression is not that what we wanted to see during COVID. Hopefully, companies like yourselves and others will be able to build that. The fourth thing which is important for all of us to understand is the survey part of it. Now, every company is wanting to service a customer and please a customer. Now, today, what is the way we do it? It's an NPS or it's a score. It is 1, 2, 3, 4. And the way the reverse feedback is coming during the digital servicing is very critical today. And when the reverse feedback is coming, you will have to do your customer journey mapping. And if you do your customer journey mapping, you will understand what are the broken processes. And then comes in what others were talking about, the big data. We have to go back and figure out what is there in the data lake which is not servicing, and what do we need to integrate back and pipe it back so that we are able to service the customer appropriately. That's all from my side at this point in time. Sachin, back to you.
Got it, Pritman. I'll make a comment on it, but let me invite in Vivek, who's a specialist in analytics. Vivek, when do we solve the CRM to answer all questions? Maybe you can answer it for us.
Yeah, so we all know that now we change our approach. Initially, the approach was as a product-centric company. Now the approach is a customer-centric company. So we I joined IIFL just 2 months before, but in my previous organization, which is General Insurance, where we have implemented such a few interesting use cases of AI. In general insurance, a problem is that the claim settlement. In fact, in any insurance, claim settlement is a big issue. To sort it out, what we had done that we created a mobile application integrated with our mobile app. Customer can, whenever the accident happens, because in India, 90% of general insurance is from the motor insurance. So we implemented it into motor insurance, and just whenever the accident happens with a car, just customer need to click a pic of that damage area and just need to upload it. So suppose the damage is on the right side of a bumper. So your algorithm will calculate that is this a repairable or a replaceable? And if it's a replaceable, which part behind that also probability of get damage? And calculating all this fields, it can show you the price that the damage is 5K, 10K, 15K, whatever. And if customer think that it's appropriate cost, they can immediately settle it down. Otherwise, it goes to the process, which takes 25 to 30 days. We also implemented chat box there, which is interactive with the customer. But sometimes, if anything anywhere is stuck, which the chat box not able to handle that query, it can automatically transfer it to the human without knowing the customer. So that was the intelligence which was built to serve the customer and to better the customer experience. Recently, in India Infoline, it's all about trading, broking. We have observed that how everything is about how you can improve the trading. Purpose is to how you get the money. So we implemented one AI model where we try to retain our customer and improve our trading.
Hmm.
So where our AI algorithms can calculate on the basis of historical data that this customer is going to churn in next 1 month or not. If there are the probability, we can calculate what would be the average turnover of this customer or the client, and on the basis of that, our marketing team throw some campaigns to them, call them personally, or give some extra benefit to these customers if the average booking or turnover is higher. So this is a way where AI is helping us to retain customers and serve the customer in a better way.
Yeah, I think backend models is something where AI. So I gave an example last time, like in HDFC Bank collections, just modeling that what's the best time to call someone can actually increase the efficiency of collections, right? Because you have so much of data around who was called when and what was the result of the call. What's the best time to call Sachin when he would pick up the call, and the call pickup rates would actually increase and stuff like that. Pankaj, you have a view on this? Have you seen something happening at AXA?
Yeah, see, for life insurance, of course, while there are use cases that are applicable to the entire value chain, where we have seen most amount of successes is one on the risk scoring of a customer at the time of customer onboarding, because I think that is where, see, unlike general insurance, where it's easy to get the policy, but then it's more cumbersome at the claim stage. Whereas in life insurance is more cumbersome at the onboarding stage and much easier at the claim stage.
Yeah.
So, and hence to strengthen the underwriting, it is important to have the right, scoring and or profiling done for the customer. And that is where we have seen a sharp, early claims warning that we can catch in life insurance. I think the other place where we have seen considerable uplift is on the persistency.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the customer interactions and the way and the whole life cycle of the customer across paying premiums throughout the life cycle, where there could be a lapse, there could be let's say a change of the address, and hence could be a suspicious transaction as well, and so on and so forth. Putting all of this together, it is now relatively easier to find out who's going to pay on time and who's probably needs more intervention, either through a call, or there are a set of customers who probably will are more likelihood to pay on time, and hence you can concentrate your effort on the customers who are unlikely to pay, and hence safeguard your persistency and make sure you send them the right content, engage with them in a right way. So the customer engagement purely from a persistency is another area where we have seen significant uptake because of AI. So these two areas I would definitely say have really helped us, while of course there are areas around product recommendations, for cross-sell. Again, while some of these are in place, but honestly, the conversion rates are still pretty low, when it comes to cross-sell, etc. But persistency and risk profiling is something that we have really seen quite significant value add.
Yeah. One area in contact centers where there's an immediate benefit is if you have, so this is on the training part of the agents, right? So for us to do that right now, people sample calls and there's a quality team that will listen to the calls. But one could actually transcribe and pick up calls to be, so sample rate can become more accurate, or you could completely do away with it. One small example I observed at Ola, and I gave it yesterday also, that a lot of times, and this is not just Ola, Uber also does it, but you have a driver asking you, where do you want to be dropped? And then he would cancel the cab. Right? He doesn't like the destination. All of us would have faced that. It's a very, very common problem. The company doesn't want it, but it's hard for them to identify. But if this call is happening in a controlled manner, you could actually record, identify, is this kind of call, and was there a cab cancellation after that, right? So you can now tie in the incentive of the drivers where you are seeing red flag in terms of number of. So that's like a quality control measure and not just a conversational piece. Let me bring in a counterpoint, Mr. Duggal. In your case, the last mile is remote, and and there's a retail outlet which is serving it. Does a something like a bot, something like a chat is very far away? What are your views, right? What are your customers looking for? So you're on mute in case you're trying to speak. Tugal Sahib, you're on mute.
In the last mile and the remote areas, we have seen that the bot does not work at all. I mean, it just does not help the customer get any resolution at all, because the bot only gives you information which is very generic in nature. It does not help you resolve any issues that you have been facing. So for delivery of financial services, the typical issues that come up are, I transferred 3,000 rupees through so and so this thing, but the transaction has not gone through. So I don't see how a bot can actually help, because the moment somebody tries to do that, it will face a wall, and they will just say that they continue to repeat that question again and again. So it actually is very annoying for a customer, and he's not able to get any. What he really wants to talk to is a live agent, which is a better option than just a pure call. A live agent gives him a little more trust factor, and he knows that somebody is now listening to him, and that the agent will then tell him that, okay, let me get back to you, work on it and get back to you. If not, he might ask him to hold on for 2 minutes, and he goes back to the company's help desk, technical help desk, and tries to get an answer. So that is the way that, so I would say that customer experience on a bot or something like that has not been very positive at all. And in fact, we have our own company, we have moved from call center to WhatsApp, so which is definitely a better way to do than pure calling. So we found the WhatsApp groups are actually more effective, and I don't foresee the bot coming in at least our business on financial services delivery. It could make a progress in some other areas, but say pure banking just gives them what you need to do. If you want to open a bank account, it will just maybe list out all the factors there. But beyond that, it is not going to help him. So in fact, the customer gets a little annoyed actually. So I see it as more negative than positive.
Yeah, the learnings that I have had, bots actually work if you're seeking information which will take more time for a human being or an IVR, or to connect to an agent. If I gave an example that how to get a DD at Kotak Bank was answered by the bot much faster than me calling into the call center or talking to someone. However, if there is any sort of heightened emotion, whether it's anxiety, whether it's fear, whether it's anger, bot would completely destroy that conversation, because one needs a human being to take out emotion, right? You cannot take a emotion out on a machine. You will never feel that anxiety going away. It's only the other human being who can come and take the anxiety away. That's where a human touch is really needed. So one needs to identify those moments when there is heightened emotion, whether it's fear, anxiety, uncertainty, doubt, issues like that. However smart the bot is, the person would still want to talk to a human being because you want to take out that anxiety. Let me bring the next topic in, and I'll start with the CIOs and the CFOs on this one. Pandemic forced us to get people to work remote. A lot of applications were suddenly moved to cloud, or we found some shortcuts with opening up our current infrastructure using VPNs and made sure that people can then use them at home. We have seen that some of these applications, it seems, are moving to cloud for good, right? So this whole discussion around customer experience budgets are CapEx or OpEx is something that we keep hearing, right? And the last stroke on the camel's back end was when SBI implemented Salesforce as a CRM. We never thought or never believed that in India you would have, the CFOs are used to amortizing technology over 5 years, 6 years, and all of us have been there. But that is changing now. I want the IT leaders and the CFOs to come in and say, has it moved for good? Are we now saying that we'll not put capex and everything has to be baked into the business and all our expenditure on applications will be OPEX, or is it still a mix, right? And Pankaj, I'll put you on a spot. I see you thinking there. So why don't you come in and then we'll bring in a CFO.
Well, it's an interesting topic, by the way. My view on this topic, as it stands today, Sachin, is that while things have moved to an extent over the last 5 years, where now CFOs have started understanding the rationale of a subscription-based services as opposed to capitalizing over a fixed lifetime value of an asset, is now getting clarified. But the other side of this story is that despite that, there are instances where it says the capex always trumps opex, and this could be situational as well. For example, if an insurance company is bleeding because of claims, suddenly there's a lot of pressure on opex, and then without worrying about what is right for the organization, the intent is how do we reduce opex, which means all of this goes for a toss. But in principle, I think things have changed when it comes to this, especially considering that apart from your core backend systems, there is actually none of the assets have a long shelf life nowadays. Everything is churning out at a much faster frequency. You create an onboarding platform today, and after 3 years, you're absolutely going to change it or replace it rather. Because the technology would have leaped further ahead, and and you will not be able to deliver the kind of experience that you want to bring to the end customer or the seller. And with this kind of fast evolving landscape, I don't think capex model can anyway be run very well. So in some shape and form, CFOs, sorry, but don't have too much of choice as well. But this battle still continues in some shape and form.
But that's a very, very interesting view coming from an IT leader, Pankaj, because sometimes it's also IT which thinks that internal teams would do it. But I think the core assets, you rightly said, apart from core assets, everything is up for change because it's changing so fast. Somebody mentioned that example of change in law for Aadhaar-based KYC. Sort of all investments just went off, right? I think it was Vishal. Vishal, can I bring you in?
Yes, please. So yeah, as you rightly mentioned, actually we spent a lot of money in the onboarding infrastructure, and thereafter it got obsolete, and then ultimately we will again have to move or would look to have another kind of technology for the same. So again, like whenever this kind of proposal comes up, we look at in detail as to like cost benefit analysis, and as a CFO or the finance team, so basically we always look to push on the OPEX model, because that even if we are consuming more at initial stage, still this is manageable, and we could be more flexible to change to the technology at later stage. So that way, of course, OPEX no doubt is a better model. But of course, sometimes we also look at the kind of budget we already have for that kind of basically service, and accordingly, like we basically manage within the OPEX and the CAPEX model.
I wish we had a CEO here where we have an IT leader and a CFO agreeing on OPEX as a model. But let me also bring in, no jokes apart, I'll bring in my perspective because I've seen a lot changing in our business. Can we get Rajni ma'am? We have another CFO from J&K Bank. Ma'am, CapEx versus OpEx, is there a change that you are seeing? I'm not seeing you on the screen on the video. Are you there? She might have dropped off. I think she had a choppy connection. So let me bring
She's
in.
there. I am. Yeah, she is there, but maybe.
Oh yeah, I can see. I can
Yes,
see her.
yes, she's here. Maybe because of she's from Srinagar. Maybe the connectivity issue is always a.
Yes, yes, I've seen. Yeah. Okay, that's okay. Let me bring in Vivek then. Vivek, at your end, and I know data applications are extremely expensive and mostly available on OpEx only. But what have you seen, CapEx versus OpEx? Is there a trend that you guys are seeing at your business and even your previous business, which was the general insurance company?
Yeah, so we follow the hybrid approach. It's not like that only we go for the OpEx or CapEx, because there are few things where we don't have expertise. So and we are not a technology company. We are a business company. So we don't want to spend that, and we like to take a help with the experts who had already implemented these some useful successful cases in that particular field or related use case. So that's a completely uh, hybrid approach. Depends how IT team able to convince the CFO and CEO on that which model we have to follow.
Got it. I'll tell you a stat from our business. 2 years back, Ameo's business, we are a contact center technology provider, right? It has moved away from infrastructure and is now considered a core application. And 80-85% of our new. Somebody just muted me. About 80-85% of our business was happening on-prem, and 15-20% on subscription, whether it's in customers' cloud or our cloud. And today, about 85-90% of our business is happening on public cloud or customers' cloud on subscription, and 10%-15% is on-prem. That too, mostly expansion of what we have already sold. So and we are wondering, earlier we used to, that's good for us, our business, because the lifetime value is bigger, but it also puts us under pressure to constantly improve the product quality, right? Because in one-time sale, you can actually do that sale, and then all you need to do is whatever you have sold, just maintain it. Whereas in subscription, if you don't constantly keep up with what is happening, you will have a customer churning out. So there's a big shift. And the organization completely shifted from, selling one-time licenses to, to movement to subscription as well as managed cloud, right? So now that the regulation in India is changing, I don't know how many of you are aware, you can actually have an IP PSTN intermix. So we can finally have a pure play cloud contact center in India. So you don't need any infrastructure. You don't even need anything VPN. Just open your browser and start taking calls. Because somebody who has a telco license, for example, we would have a telco license, so you could do that now. Indian government finally allowed that to happen, which means everything can, if you want to scale very quickly, you want 10,000 more seats to happen for a process, you can increase, decrease, all this can be managed on cloud. Awesome. I heard Rajni ma'am come in and then go again.
The technology improving and taking transformation in such a rapid speed. We've moved the OpEx model than the CapEx model, because we had bad experiences in CapEx, because we did invest and things really didn't shape up, especially during the COVID era. So banking is adopting, and it's an early adopter of the cloud, and these new technologies, especially in risk profiling, early warning signals, predictive analysis, NPA monitoring applications and all. So we are following the OpEx model. So we have shifted. There is a paradigm shift from the OpEx to the OpEx.
Got it, ma'am. Got it. Yeah, I think a lot of people burnt hand with technology because it is changing so fast. So you don't need to sort of commit to a expense. Even in our scale, we are a 700 people organization. Even laptops are an OPEX now. We believe that it's changing so fast that you're not even sure that a developer will continue to code on a laptop, right? Anyways, developers everywhere are, and I'll just switch to Hindi for a while. Sabke jamai ho gaye hai, because suddenly the market is full of funding coming in. So really hard to please the developers these days. I'm sure some of your IT applications people are also, you must be facing those challenges at your end. Okay, let me bring in the next topic. This is the Bharat versus India divide on the CX, right? Are there two clear strategies that you are seeing internally being adopted, right? Are different channels working? Is this servicing completely different? Or are you seeing more unification of how we are serving those customers? Give me examples of complete divide that you actually have to have two teams, or stuff that you're able to unify in the customer engagement journey in Bharat. So a Bangalore or a Gurgaon or a Mumbai or a Chennai versus a Raipur or a city that I don't know of, right? That kind of divide. Is there a real divide that you guys are seeing? And again, I would invite Rajpal sir because he's a specialist on the last mile in tier 3, tier 4. Rajpal sir, can I bring you in? What's the real difference? What channels are working? What are not working in the
Yeah.
Bharat
So
part?
the last mile, and for that purpose, I'm really talking about offline. It's a totally different ballgame, according to me. For when you talk about digital transformation for customer experience, that is, I would say, directly to the customer is still missing. What has happened is that digital transformation may have happened at the agent level to some extent. When you talked about the first topic on the remote this thing, we have noticed a very interesting development in the last 1 year is on product shift. What is the product that is now fast moving in a sense from a service standpoint? We have seen that in the last 1 year, the AEPS transactions have gone from 10,000 crores per month, and in September it is 24,000 crores. Now, these are all person present transactions. These are all person present transactions. So that means the customer has to go to the agent to use the Aadhaar protocol and do either a cash in, which is only on us, or cash out, which is basically off us. So what has driven this thing? What has driven this is primarily because there have been a lot of apps in the market. Various companies have done away with the POS terminal, which was micro ATM basically, with a biometric device, and gone in for apps, which has reduced the cost of the devices substantially. Micro ATM could cost something like 13 to 14,000. With the biometric device, in this period also, the government has given out a very large amount of relief and support. And in order to withdraw that amount from the bank, the customer has to either visit a bank, which in the remote place is quite distant, I would say, on an average, at least about 20-25 kilometers, or he can go to his local agent, Kirana store, within his village, and do a AEPS transaction for cash out. So this has been a very major shift in the product. Now, you might say that what were the people doing before the AEPS came in? So they were doing cash out, but they were doing what they call a on-us cash out. That means, say, banks like State Bank of India had a biometric protocol, but not Aadhaar protocol. So that means they had their direct biometric connected to their backend, and somebody could withdraw that. But that has now changed drastically in favor of of us, cash outs. So that is one major shift in the product that has happened. The second shift that has happened is in cards. And we have seen that there has been a very large increase in card transactions. And very particular in the card transactions, I want to mention where Prithiman will, I think, agree with that, is what they call ATM cash out. Now, that is a typical situation where a micro ATM is actually is the only device that can do that. Typically, where suppose you have a SBI card and you go to a Bank of Baroda ATM, you can do a cash out maximum 10,000 rupees, right? So that is what is replicated in a micro ATM. So we have seen a surge in transaction on ATM cash out. That means the customer has done away with the Aadhaar and he wants to do a ATM cash out. But the danger of that is that it's not a person present transaction. So somebody can just have the card of his relative, he can go there, put in the pen. It's a technically a dangerous situation. But definitely the APS has been very, very robust, and it is growing very rapidly, and in the next 1 year it will cross 30,000 crores. So that is some so if you see as a customer experience, yes, there has been a customer positivity, but that has been enabled by the retail agent and by enabling with their banks the technology. So to that extent, digital transformation has happened not directly to the customer, but to the agent, but which has fallen back on to the customer, and he's getting a better experience. So that is definitely one major, I would say, development that we have noticed in the market, and these are all RBI statistics, so these can easily be accessed. So that's, I think, been a very, very positive development. And I think from a customer standpoint, yes, he feels very happy about it because he can now go to the agent and draw cash instead of going to the bank. So it's been a major, I would say, development which may not be well known in the industry as yet.
Got it.
Strangely.
I'll come back to this topic. Pankaj might drop off. So Pankaj, there was this last question I wanted from everyone, which is, tell me top 2 problems that you're looking to solve in the next 2 quarters. So I'll put you on a spot. What are the top 2 problems that you are looking to solve? Or is there something that's ongoing that you want to solve in the next 2 quarters?
Also, at least in our organization, the last 12 months was focusing largely on distribution, sales, momentum, at least in the context of our organization. The next 12 months is our roadmap to do a complete service transformation, which is about bringing omni-channel customer experience and communications, creating a robust CRM capability more from a service standpoint. Of course, digitizing all the workflows with some conversational experience. And of course, as I said, backed up by quite a robust cloud communications kind of messaging platform. I think that in totality would help us to solve our current NPS. And and also, once your NPS is right, then that's the right time, you cross-sell as well. Yes. So next 12 months, we are fully geared on service transformation, risk management aspects. So that's what we are really focusing on. Sure. Sales is now more or less sorted out.
We've got enough customers. Now we need to retain them. Thank you so much, Pankaj, for joining in. I would be in touch, man. Some of the things that you have said, I think it strikes a chord. So I'll be in touch.
Sure. Thanks, Sachin. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, let's come back to the Bharat versus India divide. So what Mr. Duggal is saying that from assisted, but what I wonder is, Duggal Sahib, you made a comment that people have given up on the Aadhaar based transaction. Was it because there was a person involved and they were illiterate and they couldn't do it? or they were finding it difficult, or transactions were failing, that they said, "Yeah, मैं cash ही निकाल लेता हूँ." What is the reason that people are?
No, it's not. It's not a major this thing. I'm saying it's as a product, it has caught on, but
Got
it may account for not more than 10% of the total cash out, less than 10%.
Got it.
But it's a product which is very convenient, and it's something like this tap and go that is going to happen very soon. And there are so many new developments that are taking place where they are talking now about a biometric credit card. Those are developments that are happening. So coming back to your point, question, it's a very small percentage, but even if it is 10% of 24,000, it's a lot of this thing money there. But it's just a matter of convenience. It's not that there is any. He might have just forgotten to bring his Aadhaar card, and maybe he just. Although you don't need the card now because of the fingerprint, so it's just a matter of convenience, I would say. But as I said, the fallout is not a person-present transaction, so he might have actually sent his relative to withdraw the cash, and so it's a form of convenience. But I think I would not like to encourage that too much, personally speaking.
Yeah, I think the whole UPI system was built so that the actual cash out using something like ATM reduces. There is risk also. It's also difficult to manage, and then for the companies, the cost of servicing that is really high. So yeah, okay. Let me bring in Himanshu. Himanshu, you had some views on the tier 3, tier 4. I think from an insurance standpoint, can you bring that in?
Yeah. So I somehow agree with Mr. Duggal that there is still some way to go. Like in tier 3, tier 4 town, the end customer is still not that digital savvy, though the penetration is increasing very fast. So the way to go, I think, is enabling the agent who is present on the ground, digitally enabling him so that he can actually service the end customer. For example, in our insurance business, we have something like point of sale, wherein any individual or maybe a kirana guy, he can be a boss, and we offer him a digital solution, so he can get the basic insurance policies issued right then and there. So the customer gets the service locally, and we process it digitally from our end, so we don't actually have presence in those locations. So this is something which we have seen has been picking up. Like in last couple of years, we have added about 4,000 point of sale in insurance. That too, wherein before becoming a POS, somebody has to clear the exam. So that is something what we have seen that channel is working in the tier 3, 4 towns.
How about WhatsApp? I mean, I was sitting with the head of India business for WhatsApp this morning, and the penetration and the engagement numbers are just mind-boggling. Are people in tier 4 cities, I mean, have you seen them responding to notifications on WhatsApp if you're using it? Is there better engagement there rather than calls or even in person? Literacy might be a problem, and one of the use cases is that can you encourage the customer to actually record the voice and send as a WhatsApp message, and somebody can then respond as a voice rather than a call center kind of scenario if this is asynchronous, right? So and all this can be done. So let's say he wants to know, "Bhai, mera balance ab tak aaya nahi hai bank mein," and this gets transcribed and somebody responds. Somebody means a bot responds, "Sir, aapka balance aa gaya," but he cannot write it because the person cannot read most probably. So you could actually record and send it automatic, right? That's one of the things that we were discussing with WhatsApp, because their engagement is through the roof, man. 200% increase in individuals to business WhatsApp accounts. Has anybody seen WhatsApp working in?
Right now, like I'll tell you, like we send a lot of SMSs to the customer, and what we have been observing that the SMSs go unread most of the times. So we are in the process of shifting it to WhatsApp, to the WhatsApp business, API-based account. So we agree. I agree with you. Like WhatsApp is going to be more interactive, and we can also integrate chatbots and other things therein.
Yeah, that whole journey from Prithiman, you were saying something.
Yeah, there are 2-3 elements which I just wanted to bring in. Mr. Duggal and Mr. Gupta brought in the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 segregation of customers. While the Bharat and the India divide is evidenced, but I will bring in 2 elements which we did from a data set study perspective, and this is not as deep as Vivek could do from an analytic standpoint. But what we understand is tier 1 and tier 3, the customers don't behave differently from an adoption perspective, right? And I'm talking about my 10-11 million customer base, and it represents the country, right? Which means that if the customer is able to use WhatsApp, the customer can use digital asset as well. That's point number 1. So the referenceability of we having a mindset that tier 3, tier 4 will take time for digital adoption is something which I think is not existing. And then this is very minuscule data set which I've done study on, and the behavior is changing. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is WhatsApp. Now, WhatsApp has come in at a time where adoption to WhatsApp is already 6 years in the country. We have used WhatsApp and we are using WhatsApp from an adoption standpoint, and we have got an X amount of customers who are using WhatsApp, but for us, we are not doing a two-way communication. Initially, now we are just doing a push. So you ask for an information, we'll push you through a WhatsApp. Now, what you brought in, Sachin, was very important and critical. Now, can I voice record and send it to you? Can you listen to that? Can you respond to me? For us, 1 is it's a financial transaction. 2, it needs verification, authentication. 3, it has to get it has to walk in as a ticket for me in my CRM. From an auditory and other perspective, I should be able to view that, and then I should be able to pass on some information back to the customer. Hence, we built a different tool altogether for tier 2 and tier 3, which is a broken down CRM at a very, very top of the iceberg level kind of a thing. So we push in SMSs, we take in the web forms, we have the agent sitting at the front desk at the branches and talking to the tier 3, tier 4 customers. Authentication process is very strong and verified. We as a bank and an entity of an NBFC, we can't do something very different. So hence I'm using, everyone is sitting here, all have these regulatory assurances to be given, but we found a route, a surrogate to walk into a tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 by creating a simple CRM out of the main CRM and trying and having that interaction work. While the objective is the machine can give you information, but someone has to communicate that information, because the person who's coming in is not literate enough to understand and read the SMSs, because your SMSs are Hindi and English. It's not all regional languages, right? We need to push that regional, the India divide conversation by vernacular SMSs going out with the specificity of the confirmation saying that the customer is understanding that language from where it is. The other problem which we have is when the customer is getting adopted, the salesperson, what is the customer getting ticking off, whether the customer is being ticked off as Hindi, English as the general stuff, or the regional specific or the language specific, and is that authentication happening at the onboarding stage, and is the customer going through the journey? If all of that is stitched together, this is a solvable problem.
Got it. So actually the taking of the message, putting it in the backend system, somebody from backend validating and responding is a solved problem today, Prithiman. I'll come to you, but the authentication is a difficult problem because we can't rely on, I mean, we are allowed to use OTP, we are allowed, but you know, WhatsApp message delivery is not something which validates whether the phone number is there or not. So it still needs to be done outside of WhatsApp for it to be validated. But I'll come back to, okay, we have last 15 minutes. So let me throw the catch-all question to all. Top two problems that you are looking to solve over the next 6 to 12 months or 2 quarters, you know, however, most likely we look at still financial year. So 6 months is this financial year. What are the top 2 problems in your mind? We heard from Pankaj, from focus from sales to overhauling service. Who wants to go first? Or Anurag, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think let me take that because a couple of things just to set the context. We have been talking about AI and machine learning from point of view of customer engagement. So what my the gist always has been that uh, when it comes to, and this is linked to the previous question as well, the Bharat versus India divide, that when we are dealing with the tier 3 and below markets, AI becomes more fruitful, or the machine becomes more fruitful when it is an enabler to the feet on the street, or enabler to a human being who is there to translate the machine information or the intelligent algorithm to the customer and act as a bridge between the intelligence of the machine and the value addition it will provide to the customer. So I think that's where the maximum utility lies. Now, coming to the initiatives that I am personally undertaking and my organization is involved in. So, as I touched upon, the tier 3 and below markets have a big challenge of availability of quality data, specifically financial information. So we provide, for example, home loans to very underserved and unserved segment of population. Like a tea stall owner in a tier 4 township. Now, this guy does not have any account bookkeeping, principles. It's like loose chits on which transaction is being done. There is nothing which is digital which you can assess. And if he's a new to credit guy, then you don't even have any trade line available on the bureau as well. So this guy is, the board is completely blank. You don't know anything about him. So when you are underwriting such kind of a person, how do you do that? Because apart from the bank account, which by the way, in a lot of cases, we will get open for the first time. This guy does not even have a bank account as well. So there are no banking habits as well. So when you are trying to grant credit to this kind of profile, how do you do the risk assessment? So yeah, there are manual subjective processes where a credit guy will visit this place, a sales guy will visit, see the establishment, rather, in some cases, we'll spend a couple of hours there to see the footfall and the cash flow, how it is happening, because there is no alternate way to do that. But what the kind of things that I have brought in over the last couple of years, that now we have started also capturing lifestyle informations, which are more of proxy or surrogate variables for the credit worthiness of the customer. So we have started building a database and we do lookalike modeling using these. So we use these kind of information. We are also working on developing two things. One is a psychometric credit risk assessment, where it will be more of a survey base and try to do a psychometric risk assessment of the customer, and add on top of it using a bit of, not a bit of, rather a lot of deep learning to do a pitch and tone analysis where we can understand the voice modulation and do that sincerity and genuineness kind of assessment from the conversation that we are having over the call. So, the next stage AI kind of credit risk assessment, I think these are the areas where we need to, invest time and resources and capability. So that's what we are working upon right now.
Very interesting, Anurag. The first one that you mentioned, psychometric, I think is a solved problem. I mean, there are models available today. So I don't know if we can survey in vernacular or not. I mean, it's usually done.
I think that part is the biggest challenge, because English is a fine, Hindi is fine, but
there is a startup waiting to happen, right? Somebody who can do psychometric analysis in vernacular. I think it would be a hot. I will actually put it out in the entrepreneur group if somebody can solve it. But the other problem, detecting genuinity from voice is a hard problem. But you can detect emotion at that point of time. You can get anxiety. You can get irritability from voice. I mean, those are all available. But
absolutely
awesome. Thanks for sharing. Vishal, I see you being ready to share. Yeah.
Right. So just adding to what actually Anurag has mentioned. So we run a digital lending application, TrueBalance, and we cater to tier 2, 3, largely new to credit customers. And as he rightly mentioned like while deciding what kind of credit scoring we can allocate. So we have our own internal credit scoring system, wherein we have different kind of data points available from the customer and basis which we basically allocate certain limits or credit to the customers. So one is that it is very difficult in case of new to credit. So we again next 2 quarters I think need to work more on how to assess these kind of customers. So this is one area, and I will add one more thing to it on the collection side. So again, one is credit assessment. Giving loan is actually the easier process. Collecting is difficult process. So if you have given loan, so what kind of things you can consider about the customer that the chances of getting money back is more. So that is largely the two things we will be focusing more in the upcoming 2
Collections,
quarters.
you're talking about the actual collections process and how can we make it more, how can we increase coverage? How can we increase collections? Or you're saying assessing the customer?
Assessing the collection part. Yes.
Got it. Perfect. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Prithman, you want to go next?
Yeah, it's a difficult question now. 2 quarters, 4 quarters is a problem, right? So
tell me the top 2 problems.
So we have technology in place. There is a CRM, there is an IVR, there is an ASBR. It's a paintbrush approach, right? Everything is a paintbrush approach. Do we want to do a whitewash or do we want to do a paintbrush? So my understanding today is you have to contextualize to personalize. When I make that big statement, it is intrusive and it has to be interactive, and then it cannot be unidirectional medium and intrusive. But in today's digital world, what I believe is AI has got that powerhouse to bring in the right context at the right time. And real-time data analysis, geotagging, intent mapping, referenceability. So example, if a customer is swiping a card in the hospital, I will not sell him a conversion, EMI conversion. I will tell him, do you want a credit limit increase? It has to happen intuitively, right? If you can't do that, then you're just having a whitewash, right? You're not using a paintbrush, right? That's and important is while you are doing all of this through the machine, bringing in the context, bringing in the appropriate response, the machine, the voice bot will talk. We just don't want to do a voice bot. We want to do a voice bot which can synthesize sentiment, and then we move a little further. Digital will never have emotional quotient is my response today.
Yeah.
It has to be handed over to the agent for the emotional bit of it. So if a customer comes in, if I know his NTCC, while Vishal and Anurag is using the word NTCC, it is all for us. The onboarding is different. If it is NTC, the onboarding has to be different, right? Because it is hyper personalization. Now retention has to be again very different for different kind of segment. Financial loss, COVID issue, multiple cards, ABC. So that has to get worked out. Now that's the first scenario which we want to solve. The other one is from a CSAT perspective. Now, everyone spoke about in the first question, what is it that has changed and what is it that will never get rewinded to the old form? The first problem statement was customer acquisition. Everyone made the statement, collection. So the cost of acquisition today was X, and because of digital interfaces, it has come down by half. Now, if the cost of acquisition has dropped by half, and that could happen through the digital assets which has got created, then if you have got the customer inside the door, what do you do from a CSAT perspective to make sure that the customer does not walk out of the door? Right? The fundamental switch of CSAT has to happen in this digital wave. Now, OPEX, CAPEX, I don't want to get into that very difficult topic of a CFO and a CTO and everyone. But my only understanding of that is simple. If I can get the CSAT right, and if I can make the broken processes, which is my customer journey mapping, appropriate, and break the policies differently at different places, my retention rates will be higher, satisfaction rates will go up, and I should be able to solve that problem. So 2 problem statement. One is hyper personalization. Second is customer satisfaction. If this 2 is embedded in a way that can solve the problem, I think we should be able to be in a better place tomorrow.
This one is a journey and not a destination, because I mean, wherever you would get, the next 2 quarters you want to improve it. But thanks for sharing, Prithman. Can we have Vivek? Vivek, can you share what are the top 2 problems?
Yeah. So one of the biggest artificial AI problem is data acquisition and storage, because we in your business AI specific system is mostly depends on the sensors data as an input, and for validations of AI, a mountain of sensor data is collected. Irrelevant and noisy data sets may cause obsessions, and they are hard to store and analyze also. So one thing which we are focusing on the data acquisition and storage of the data. Other part is, of course, everybody's focusing, and we are also focusing on the data security and the data privacy part. Third major part is the adoption of the use cases, because what happens that most of the time business comes with 100 of use cases when we go back to them, but when it's come to the adoption part, sometimes we are difficult to define the ROI. So we majorly focused on the which case we have to select and who will be responsible for the ROI, because that's a things which we need to come up with a business side, that which is the best use case for them. And we are IT people. We are just a facilitator for them. You just ask us and we will give it to you.
So on the acquisition and storage, Vivek, what's the challenge? Is it creating in-house data lakes, or the cost of storage on cloud, or the security associated? What is the top of the mind problem?
All these things, because you know that when you're collecting a data, suppose if you're doing something on IoTs, and when you're collecting data from the IoTs, so there are the sensors. They are giving you a high volume of a data always. So you need to select that which data you need to store and where to store. Everybody is moving into the cloud, and when we are going to the cloud, your cost is involved in that. So you must be selective on that, what would be where if you are going to the cloud. So you need to select that what part of the data is important.
Got it. Interesting problem. I mean, typically the tendency is store everything, but store everything is very expensive. So
Exactly.
one has to have an objectivity or a goal in mind that what are we going to train out of it. Though I think cost of storage has become like very, very commoditized now. You can actually store huge, but the data also has gone through the roof. The data sort of surpasses all expectations of what you can generate if you really want to measure everything. Good.
Especially that we have become so hungry for unstructured data these days. You know, the images, the message logs, the voice recordings. There's so much of unstructured data. If it would have been structured, you know, another 5-10 years would have been an easy journey for us data scientists. But now it's like a humongous job at hand.
Yeah, completely agree.
Got it. Mr. Dugal, can I also bring you in? Anything that you have top of the mind that you are looking to solve in the 6 months?
So my favorite subject, of course, is last mile. So I will only talk about that for the time being. So I think the biggest challenge that we I won't say we are facing, but I think what I would like to address is to improve the quality of the agents, right? So, and in order to do that, we want to do something like a certification of agents. You know, agents should be certified against a set criteria, and I think that is very important to build trust with their customers.
Yeah,
it's important to build trust with their customers. So, for example, we have in the State Bank of India BC model, correspondent model, we have about 1,800 agents, and they have almost about 8 million accounts that they service. Now, I'm not saying that, the trust factor has come from the brand of SBI, but purely from the customer to the agent, there has to be a sense of quality in terms of service delivery, in terms of transparency, in terms of this thing. It's not so much of SBI, I'm just giving it as an example. But financial services delivery at the last mile, trust is the most important factor. And there is no certification available today to really classify whether this agent is A, B, or C. And I suspect, it's my only hunch, that most of the agents are between B and C actually. And that is a very disturbing trend, I thought. Internationally, there has been a lot of initiatives. One of them is what they call a SMART campaign. So that campaign lists out several principles of agent qualification, so to say, and they sort of almost certify an agent or a service provider that yes, your agents are smart certified. So I think that is one area that I think needs to be done, and this can only happen either through self-regulation. The BFSI, this thing, federation has some initiatives on self-regulation, but it's not yet formalized. So from my standpoint, I think that is the biggest challenge to have. And if you have good quality agents, it will lead to significantly better customer experience and increase in volume of business as well.
I completely relate this problem to the urban company problem that I mentioned. It has to be a training / certification driven thing at the last
yes,
mile.
exactly.
You're absolutely right, sir. The brand of the company can get you the first time, but if you really do a good job there, the brand name actually is irrelevant. I mean,
so it's a simple, which brings me to the second problem, which I want to relate to the first one itself, is on financial literacy. Unfortunately, the state of financial literacy in the country is pathetic, I would say, because I'm sorry to use that word, because even the banks are doing their bit, but their concept of financial literacy, I'm saying generally speaking, is have a bunch of leaflets, give it to the agent, he will distribute it, and that's the end of the story. That's not what financial literacy is about. I'll give you a very, I would say, very typical example that we have encountered, and I'm very sorry to actually state that we met with the self-help group organization, which had about 35,000 women. Now, I approached them that I want to help you in financial literacy. And they said, like what? So the two things that I said, savings and insurance. The moment I uttered the word insurance, they jumped from their seat. They said, we don't want to talk to you about anything. They were so this thing. So I was very perplexed. And then they, after 2 or 3 visits, they didn't reveal in the first visit. Third visit, they said that one top level, I can't name the organization, came here and sold us 35,000 policies, which were ULIP policies. Okay, stock market. And this is sometime in 2007, 2008. And immediately thereafter, the stock market collapsed. And in fact, their entire savings practically wiped out. And so what I'm saying is that a customer should be financially literate to understand what he's getting into. I mean, it's easy said than done, but yes. So that type of education cannot happen from the service provider. It cannot happen from the insurance company for sure, because they have a vested interest to do that. Yeah. So it has to happen from a neutral agency who will guide the customer that look, and insurance happens to be, insurance penetration in India is abysmally low. It's barely 2%. And somebody made the comment that India's current level of poverty is because there was no insurance in the first place. The reason for that is that a villager has an accident and is falls ill. So there's no insurance. So he has to go to the money lender to borrow that money. And once he takes money from the money lender, that principal is never returned. Yeah. And that leads to poverty actually. So insurance is a very important, I would say, aspect that the rural India has to adopt. And it cannot be adopted without having proper financial literacy. We'll see. I think that is, I would go to the extent of saying that India has a literacy mission. So why can't India have a financial literacy mission? Right. So government has to allocate some funds to that, and it's not a huge amount of funding that requires to be done. And yes, it can also happen digitally, but more importantly, it has to happen on the ground. And I think the banks have to take a lead in that, and of course, financial service providers also have to do that. But there is a cost to that, and I think everybody has to take a view that it's a cost that will give you returns over a period of time. So
we can go on and on, sir, but I see people, telling us that it's 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock. We still haven't covered Rajni ma'am on her top 2 problems, but her audio connection is really bad. We can try, ma'am, 15 seconds if you can come in. Otherwise, we'll try and wrap it up.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think the connection is good. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for spending the time. It was personally a pleasure to meet. Ma'am, I'm not able to hear you. Sorry. There is a problem with the connection.
For me, I see the future.
Rajni ma'am, we can't hear you. Sorry.
I would like to, go back to the branch.
Ekta, can you help me? I'm not the host. I think we need to.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to tell her that we can't hear her. And
so she's saying, I got it what she means to say. She's talking about the connectivity issue only, that is
got it.
Connectivity. Yeah.
Got it. So, a lot of interesting learnings. We'll be actually doing a little bit of snippets on social media. We'll ask for your permission. Whatever has been shared, can we share it? There was not a lot of confidential stuff.
You hear me now?
No, ma'am, it's extremely choppy.
Okay.
No problem, ma'am. Your voice is breaking because of the connectivity. It's okay, ma'am.
Okay, so we will do, we'll ask for your permission before we put anything on the social media. And personally, it was a pleasure to know some of you and discuss some of the problems. If there is any relevance as a provider, if we can come in and help, please feel free to check us out. If there's something that you've discussed today, we find it relevant, we'll approach you if that is okay. Thank you so much for the time and the attention. I'll personally be connecting with all of you on LinkedIn after this. Ekta, thanks for organizing this. Thanks to the organizing team. Ekta, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So on this closing note, of course, we had a very interesting session today. And thank you. I would like to first thank all our thought leaders for really taking out your precious time on Wednesday, especially in mid of the week, and you sharing your precious thoughts with us and insight. Thank you, our partner MEO, for helping us organize this interesting roundtable. And of course, as Mr. Sachin said, that personally, we will be sharing the entire recorded video for your reference, and the sneak peek will be asked with your permission if we can share on the social media platform, and then only we can take it forward. So thank you once again. And please follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for various events, webinars, and roundtables. And please be safe. Thank you once again. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, sir. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Bye. Bye.
Pleasure, sir. Pleasure.